Today's story is from a 20-year-old named Tom, a foster kid, working as a courier to get by. There was this kind woman on his route who kept inviting him inside, and he got the completely wrong idea about why. Trust me, you're not ready for where this goes. Let's get into it.
There's a little velvet box in my sock drawer right now. Been there 3 weeks. I keep taking it out, looking at it, putting it back, taking it out again. Because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to ask Grace to marry me. And I can't do that. I can't get down on one knee without telling this whole story first. Because the truth is, I almost ran from the best thing that ever happened to me. I almost didn't show up. And the reason I almost didn't show up is honestly kind of embarrassing. But you'll see. Stick with me. Let me back up, way up. My name's Tom Merrick. I'm 24 now, but when this starts, I was 20. And at 20, I was pretty much alone in the world. See, I grew up in the system, foster homes. My folks were gone by the time I was 7. I won't get into all that. It's not that kind of story, and honestly, I've made my peace with most of it. But the short version is, I aged out of foster care at 18 with a duffel bag, a bus pass, and nobody. No family, no Sunday dinners, nobody to call when something good happened, and nobody to call when something bad did, which was most of the time back then. And when you grow up like that, it does something to how you see people. You learn early that when somebody's being nice to you, there's usually a reason, and the reason usually isn't you. Everybody wants something. That's not me being dramatic. That was just the water I swam in. A foster placement was nice to you until the check stopped coming. A friend was nice to you until they needed something. Kindness, in my experience, always had a bill attached. Always. So I got good at keeping my head down and expecting the worst. It's a lonely way to live, but it's safe. Nobody can take what you never let yourself want. So, 20 years old. I was putting myself through community college. I wanted to do something with computers, networking, IT, something with an actual future, something that could pull me up out of where I started. But nobody was paying my way. There's no scholarship for kid nobody wanted. So I worked, and the job I landed was delivery driver, courier, one of those regional parcel companies, brown uniform, hand scanner, 200 stops a day, out the door before the sun was even up. And I'm going to be honest with you, I hated it. I did. My feet ached all the time. The van's heater died in October, and nobody fixed it till spring. People yelled at me for stuff that wasn't my fault, packages that were late before they ever hit my truck. And here's the part that really got me. Every single package I carried up to somebody's nice warm house was a little reminder of every nice warm house I never got to have. Kids' bikes on the lawn, Christmas wreaths on the door, families I could see through the window sitting down to eat together, and me, the ghost in brown, dropping a box on the mat and driving off to the next one. But it paid. It kept me in instant noodles and textbooks and a rented room in a house where the landlord barely knew my name. So I did it. Every day. And on my route, there was this one house. Nice house. Not fancy, just a warm, lived-in kind of place. Blue shutters, a wind chime on the porch that you could hear before you even got up the steps. Flowers out front that somebody clearly loved, because nobody keeps flowers looking like that by accident. And that house got deliveries all the time, 2-3 times a week. And every single time, before I could even get the box on the mat and scan out and escape, the front door would open. And there'd be Diane Whitfield. She was maybe 50, 52, and she was just kind. In a way I didn't have a category for, didn't know where to file it. The very first time, she opened the door, and she looked at me, really looked, right in the eyes, the way basically nobody ever looks at the delivery guy. And she said, "Oh, honey, it's freezing out here. You're not wearing nearly enough." And she held out a thermos. Coffee. For me. A total stranger in a brown uniform who she'd known for all of 9 seconds. And I said no. Of course I said no. Backed off the porch like she'd offered me something dangerous. Because reason attached, right? Nobody hands the courier a hot thermos of coffee for free. There's an angle. There's always an angle. But it kept happening. Every delivery. In the summer, it was lemonade. Real lemonade. The kind with the pulp still in it. in an actual glass with ice, not a paper cup. Sit down on the step for a second. You look worn out. One time it was cookies, still warm, wrapped up in a paper towel and pressed into my hand before I could argue. At least take these for the road. Come inside out of the sun just for a minute. I've got the AC on. And every time I said no. No, thank you, ma'am. Gotta run. Lots of stops. Sorry. Thank you, though. And she never pushed. She'd just smile, this soft, patient, slightly disappointed little smile, and say, well, maybe next time then. You take care of yourself, Tom. She knew my name. She'd read it off the little patch on my uniform that first week, and she never once forgot it. Hi, Tom. Bye, Tom. Stay warm, Tom. Do you have any idea how long it had been since somebody said my name like it was a good thing to say? Like it belonged to a person they were glad to see? I honestly couldn't remember. In my world, my name mostly got said when I was in trouble, or when a caseworker was reading it off a file. And I want you to really understand this. This went on for months. Months. This woman was relentlessly, almost stubbornly kind to a kid who dropped packages on her porch. And here's the messed up part, the part that tells you everything about where I was in my life. Instead of it warming me up, it started to scare me. Because it did not compute. In my world, it did not compute. Why would a grown woman go this far out of her way, this many times, week after week, for the delivery guy? What did she actually want? Nobody does something for nothing. That was a law of physics to me. And so my brain, my tired, cynical, been let down too many times brain, it went looking for the catch, and it landed somewhere ugly. I'm ashamed to even say it, but I promised I'd tell this straight, so here it is. I started to think, maybe she wanted something from me, something I didn't want to give. Here's this woman, alone in a big quiet house that always seemed empty, a house with no other cars in the driveway, and she keeps finding reasons to get the young delivery guy through her front door. And I was 20, and I'd heard things and seen things, and I put two and two together and got a number that makes me sick to think about now. I decided that was what this was, that the coffee and the lemonade and the cookies were all just the setup for something else, something wrong. I feel just awful about it now. Knowing what I know, knowing who Diane actually is, it makes my stomach turn that I ever, even for a second, thought that about her. But that was honestly where my head went, because kindness had always been a trap before. So I was sure this was a trap too. I even looked into whether I could ask my supervisor for a different route. I almost did it. I had the conversation half planned. Thank God I'm a coward about paperwork. And then came the day she wouldn't take no for an answer. It was a Friday, late fall, one of those evenings where it's already going dark at 5 and there's a real bite in the air. I brought a box up to the porch, same as always, and she opened the door. But this time, she didn't offer me lemonade. This time, she stood there with her arms crossed and this look on her face like she'd made up her mind about something. And she said, Tom, I would like you to come to dinner tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. And I am not going to let you say no this time. I have been at this for months, and I am officially out of patience. And I stood there on that porch with my heart going about 100 miles an hour. Dinner at her house on a Saturday night after dark. And every alarm bell I owned started ringing all at once. This was it. This was the thing I'd been so afraid of. The catch finally showing its face. And here's the part I'm least proud of in this whole story. I said yes. And I'm ashamed to tell you why. Part of me said yes just because I was a 20-year-old kid, and it's hard to say no to a determined woman on your own route. But part of me, some stupid, starving, lonely part of me, said yes, because I thought, well, maybe this really is what I think it is. And I'd never, look, between the foster homes and the working 2 jobs and the being alone all the time, I'd never really had any of that, any of it, not really. So this dumb, sad little corner of my heart went, maybe this is your one shot at feeling something. God, It's humiliating to say out loud now, but that's the honest, ugly truth of what was in my head walking up to that house. So Saturday night comes. 6 o'clock on the nose. I put on the one nice shirt I owned, the one without a company logo on it. I stood on that porch with my stomach twisted in a knot, genuinely not knowing whether I was walking into something wonderful or something I'd spend the rest of my life regretting. And I raised my hand and I knocked. And Diane opened the door and her whole face lit up and she said, "Tom, you came! Come in, finally, get in out of the cold." And she took me by the arm and pulled me inside, and the house smelled like an actual home-cooked meal, pot roast and something baking, and there were candles lit on the table, and I looked at that table, and it was set for three. Three. And sitting at that table, looking about as terrified as I felt, half hiding behind her own hair, was a girl about my age. And Diane put her hand on my back and gently steered me forward, and she said, "Tom, I want you to meet somebody. This is my daughter. This is Grace." Grace. And I swear to you, I just about hit the floor. Because in that 1 second, the entire story I'd built up in my head, the whole ugly, frightened, shameful story, it just collapsed. It came down like a wall. Diane hadn't been trying to lure me into anything. Diane, this impossibly kind woman, had spent months quietly watching the polite, exhausted, closed-off kid who delivered her packages, watching how he said please and thank you, how he showed up on time, how he never complained, even when he clearly should have. And she'd decided he was a good one, a good young man, and she wanted him to meet her daughter. That was the whole terrible trap I'd been losing sleep over. That was the sinister thing. She was setting me up on a date with her girl. I have never in my whole life felt like such an idiot, and such a lucky idiot at the exact same moment. And Grace, oh man, she was beautiful, genuinely, quietly beautiful. Dark hair she kept tucking behind her ear, and this shy smile she kept trying to hide. And she went pink to the tips of her ears the second we made eye contact and immediately looked down at her plate. Because here's what I found out later. She was every bit as mortified as I was. Turned out her mom had been talking me up to her for weeks. "There's this lovely young man on my route, Grace. He works so hard. You two should really meet." And Grace had been dying about it. Absolutely certain it was going to be a disaster. Certain I'd be some creep her mother dragged in off the porch. So there we were. Two people who'd both been thoroughly ambushed. And that dinner? I'll be straight with you. It was, hands down, no competition, the single most awkward evening of my entire life. Two painfully shy 20-year-olds who'd both been blindsided into a blind date by a beaming mother who kept suddenly remembering she needed to go check on something in the kitchen so she could leave the two of us alone at the table. We could barely look at each other. I knocked over my water glass reaching for the bread, soaked the whole tablecloth. Grace laughed at something I said, this real laugh that just burst out of her, and then looked absolutely horrified that she'd laughed and went red all over again. I forgot how to use a fork like a normal human being. It was a catastrophe. It was perfect. It was the best night of my life, and I didn't even know it yet. Because underneath all that awkwardness, the spilled water and the stammering and the long, painful silences, there was something. There just was. Every time Grace forgot to be nervous for a second and actually talked about her art classes, about this book she loved, about a stray cat she'd been secretly feeding behind her apartment, something in my chest that had been clenched shut my entire life loosened up, just a little. I'd never felt that before. I didn't have a word for it. I just knew I didn't want the night to end. And here's what I loved most, looking back on it. Nothing was rushed. That's not how it went for us. We were both so brand new to all of it. At the end of that disaster of a dinner, I worked up the nerve to ask if maybe, possibly, she'd want to grab a coffee sometime. And my voice cracked right in the middle of it like I was 14. And she said yes, so fast that she immediately looked embarrassed for saying it so fast. And after that, it was slow. It was long walks in the park where we'd run out of things to say and then somehow find more. It was cheap coffee we'd nurse for 2 hours because neither of us wanted to leave. It was a movie where I spent literally an hour working up the courage to move my hand 2 inches to hold hers. And when I finally did, she grabbed on like she'd been waiting the whole time. Two kids who'd never had this before, both of us terrified of moving too fast and breaking it. And it went on like that for about 3 months. 3 months of me, for the first time in my whole life, looking forward to things. Waking up with something to look forward to. 3 months of Diane casually inviting me over for dinner every single week, which by that point was fooling absolutely nobody. And then one evening, on one of our walks, I stopped, and my heart was slamming harder than it had that first night on the porch. And I said, and I'd practiced this a dozen times, and I still completely butchered it. I said, Grace, I've never done this before, and I'm probably about to do it wrong, but I really like you. Like, a lot. More than a lot. And I was wondering if you'd want to be my girlfriend. Like I was in the 8th grade, word for word, like a kid passing a note. And she went completely red. And she didn't say anything for a second that stretched out about a year long. And then she just started nodding really fast and said, yes, yeah, okay, yes. And then neither of us had any idea what you're supposed to do next. So we just stood there on the sidewalk, grinning at each other like a pair of idiots. That was 4 years ago. I'm 24 now. Grace and I have been together 4 years. We rent a little house, nothing fancy, kind of bluish. Honestly, a lot like her mom's place, which we swear we did not do on purpose, but Diane will not stop pointing out and taking full credit for. I finished my degree, got the real job I was breaking my back for, IT, good company, the future I used to only be able to see through other people's windows. And Diane helps us however she can. Shows up with furniture she was just going to get rid of anyway, groceries she accidentally bought too much of, and Sunday dinner, every single Sunday, without fail, 4 years running. And that's the part I have to just sit with sometimes. Sunday dinner, a family, someone who worries whether I'm eating enough, whether my coat's warm enough, whether I'm working too hard. I grew up with none of that, a big fat zero, and this kind woman on my route, who I was so completely sure had some dark angle, she didn't just introduce me to the love of my life, she adopted me, quietly, never made a big thing out of it, never asked for a thing back. I call her house home now without even thinking about it. She introduces me to her friends as my Tom. Me, somebody's, after a whole life of being nobody's kid. So yeah, there's a ring in my sock drawer. And when I finally ask Grace, in a couple weeks, I've got it all planned. I already know the very first person I'm going to call afterward. It's going to be Diane, because she's the one who set all of this up, every single piece of it. And I think about that word a lot now, setting me up. I was so afraid of it, because in my life, when somebody was setting you up, it meant they were about to take something from you. That's all it had ever meant, every time. And I spent months absolutely certain that Diane's kindness was a trap with my name written on it. And you know what? It was a trap. It was the best trap anybody has ever laid for another human being in the history of the world. She set me up to be loved. She looked at a broke, exhausted, walled-off foster kid standing on her doorstep in a heaterless winter, and she decided, for no reason, with nothing in it for her, that he deserved a family. And then she just gave me one. Package by package, glass of lemonade by glass of lemonade, until I finally walked through the door. And I think about all the times I said no, all those months I backed off her porch because I was so dead certain kindness had to have a catch. And I think about how close I came to asking for a different route, how close I came to never walking up those steps that Saturday night, never meeting Grace, spending my whole entire life still believing that nobody's ever nice to you for free. Some people really are just good. That's the thing I had to learn the hardest way there is, by almost missing it completely. Some people look at you, the real you, the you that nobody else ever bothered to actually see, and they just decide to be kind. And there's no bill coming. no catch. The catch is that it's real. That's the whole catch. It's just real. So in a couple weeks, I'm going to get down on one knee in front of Grace, and I'm going to ask the shy girl her mother ambushed me into meeting to spend the rest of her life with me. And whatever she says, though between you and me, I've got a pretty good feeling. Either way, I already got the thing I never in a million years thought I'd have. A family. A mom who saves me a seat at the table every Sunday. And a girl who laughed at her own joke on the worst, best night of my life and then looked so horrified that she had. All because a kind lady on my route wouldn't take no for an answer. Thank God she didn't. Thank God I finally said yes.
Okay, that one got me. He spent his whole life sure that kindness always had a catch, and the catch turned out to be a family. Sometimes people are just good. If this one warmed you up a little, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I've got another story waiting for you.